AskR did by the servant. People who work at restaurants retail, what's one thing you wished more people were aware of? We are people too. I have no power over most of what you're complaining about, and guess what? The manager doesn't have much more power over that. No, it's not personal. Until you start caroling out on me, then yes, I am doing it out of spite. I work in a call center. People are delusional about what they can get by complaining. Get a fee overturned? Maybe. Institute company-wide policy change that affects thousands of customers? Not likely. And no, I cannot direct your call to the CEO so you can complain to them. Former Jimmy John's here. The men and women making your sandwiches are under the influence of marijuana cigarettes. We know. As a server, it is not my fault if the kitchen is slow. I would gladly bring your food faster if, it had been made yet. Getting angry at me will not affect how fast the chef prepares it for food. Honestly, just stop coming to sit down restaurants if you're in any kind of a rush. If you're about to be late for the show, work, doctor's appointment, or whatever, there are plenty of fast food and fast casual spots that can get you food out quick. If we're out of something, we don't have any more in the back. Most of the time we just go back there and pretend to look. I was doing this in the early 1990s. I should have been more grateful for the long stroll I took around the entire building. That we're human too. We don't make the prices. We don't make the policies. The customer is not always right, and I wish they'd remember the entire quote. We're just trying to make a living and deserve just as much dignity and respect as you. Very often the customer is lying or greatly exaggerating the issue to make it worse. Be patient when ordering items over the phone. Sometimes, you don't sound the same on the other side. People will rattle off information with the urgency of a person trying to defuse a ticking bomb and then complain that I'm talking too quickly or too unclearly. Have some self-awareness, people. I've managed retail talk coming up on 10 years now. The only thing I could ask for is to just take us at our word. If I say I can't do that, don't make me sit there and explain myself to you. You don't know the policy better than me. There is no quick hack you can do to get something. Just don't be an asshole when I tell you my answer, even if you don't like it. The customer is always right is only half the saying. I've actually had to remind retail customers that it would be easier for the two of us if I could actually do what they want, but because of whatever reason, I cannot, and it sucks. Someone has to clean up your mess. 99% of workers are not intentionally trying to make your day worse. Virtually nobody is out here lying to you about their policies or ability to do something. When I was a supervisor, my most common line would be, why would I lie to you? What would I gain from making you upset? If you dislike our company and have consistently unsatisfactory experiences, you don't have to keep coming back. Take your business elsewhere if you are so unhappy. Preach. Be nice. It doesn't cost money to act civil. Even if something goes wrong, yelling or getting violent will not change the outcome. That the people you see, and don't see in the back, literally work their asses off for 8-12 hours a day, and barely make a living wage. So don't treat your server like garbage. And tips really do matter. But your experience also matters. So do vote with your tip. If you have a bad experience, let them know. Don't reward a snarky server, or food that doesn't meet a reasonable standard. But don't be a dick doing it either. Remember, they're humans as well. I worked as a server while I was in college until about 2010. Aside from basic things, like wishing people would keep in mind that servers are human beings just trying to earn a living like anyone else, the big one I wished people thought about more was that the server doesn't set the prices, menu items, etc. And to some degree, it's not the server's fault if a food item comes out slightly undercooked or overcooked. Unless of course it's obvious by looking at it before delivering it. The servers in a restaurant are pretty much the first line of defense, or the face of the business, so they tend to get a lot of the blame for things that go on above their heads or mistakes made in the kitchen that they may not be able to see by looking at the plate before delivering it. Getting yelled at for a policy you didn't make or a mistake by someone else is not a good feeling. We aren't here to be abused. That refrigerated frozen food you just plopped on some random shelf isn't going to magically find its way back to refrigerator freezer on its own. Once it's been out too long and we can't be sure about its temperature, straight into the compost or trash. If you already know this and continue to do it, I'd like you to be aware that you're an irredeemable wastrel and asshole. I can't believe there are people out here who do that. Yikes. We're not babysitters. Put it back where you found it. The reason there's no one at the counter to serve you is because we're tidying up the mess you made back in aisle 4. As a server, I also tip out staff. The bartender who makes your drinks and the kitchen who makes your food also gets a percentage of the sales. If you tip me $0, I just paid for you to sit in my section. What does this mean? I read a similar statement in a Facebook post. If someone doesn't tip, do you still have to pay that 10% out of your wages tips you did get? I wish people realized we're humans, and we deserve to be treated with kindness and gratitude instead of hostility and hatefulness. That is the gist of it. There's no in the back for almost every item in the store. If the shelf is empty, we're out. Honest question, then what are all those boxes in the back? Just extra stock of the things that are on the shelves? For the love of God, don't walk into a store 5 minutes before closing and touch things you don't intend on purchasing. I do not get paid enough for your trauma dumping. Let's just have you pay and move on. The trauma dumping is wearisome. One day, I had a customer trauma dump about his daughter, who has been dead for 30 years. He talked for over 1 hour. Brutal. Your jokes aren't funny and I've heard them all before, but I got a fake laugh anyway. Also, when you've waited in line for 10 minutes then get to the front and say oh what do I want, then ponder for another few minutes, you have annoyed me and everybody else behind you. It's fast food, not take your time food. Everyone is on some sort of stimulant. Those surveys have an insane ranking system and corporations regularly use them to justify being crappy to employees. Generally, giving someone less than a 9 will work against an individual employee a lot. Any kind of negative answer that has a bubble you select will also do the same. Often it won't affect the employee you think it might. About politeness.